Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sport. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome to Faith and Sports on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network. 1270 AM. We're also streaming online at carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We hope you're ready for an hour of fun and sports and faith, because this is Faith and Sport. And now to your host, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Oh, I love that music. Each and every week I say that, don't I, Chris?
Yeah.
Folks, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Welcome to the show. However, wherever you're listening to us today, thank you for joining, as always. Listen, if you know somebody that likes this show, you know somebody that would like this show, please pass it along to them. And if you want to get a hold of me today, you can reach me on my Twitter account, j.acquaviva1, so j.acquaviva1, or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. Here's what we're going to do today, folks. We're going to do this week's Hit and Miss with seminarian Charlie Wilkinson. We're going to do weekend headlines. We got guest Joe Reich, the head coach at my beloved Wingate University. He's going to join us for the show today on our conversation. We have the quick Q&A with Dr. A, and to end the show, we have our Cathlete of the Week, which is sponsored by Brand RPM. So thank you for all those folks at brandrpm.com for all your needs and logos, polos, everything in between. Check those folks out at brandrpm.com. Chris, is Charlie on the phone? Let's go to him right now. Chuck, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, John. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great. Now, folks, if Charlie Wilkinson, the name or the voice, sounds familiar to you, Charlie joined me in studio. He took the trip down. He's in seminary in India, and he's in a community called the Neo-Catechumenal Way, and he's about 4 years into seminary training. In a couple years, God willing, he's going to become a priest. And he was down here visiting me and another friend, actually, who he knows in the area, and he joined me in studio. So his voice and his name may sound familiar to you. Chuck, let's get right into it. We're going to do the hit or miss. Tell me, in the world of sport, do you have a hit or a miss from this past weekend?
Okay, I have two. I know we only have time for one, so I'm going to pick this one.
No, Chuck.
Okay.
The average person, Chuck, gets one, but seminarians get two, so go for it.
There you go. Okay. The first one is, there was a game between Washington State and UCLA, and the final score was 67-65, and you think, yeah, that's a score that we've seen before in a game between Washington State and UCLA.
That's right.
Except that was a basketball game. This was a score in a football game.
I know.
And in the second half, the score was 49-17.
That's right.
And the spread in the game was 20. And so if you have, it's Washington State 49, and I picked Washington State in my little pool, and if you have them, you're thinking, okay, you're going to cover this spread.
That's right.
But it's not really that big a deal. UCLA only had to score 50 points in the second half of a football game to beat Washington State and to cover the spread. So anyway, that was a hit for UCLA. Poor Chip Kelly has been struggling.
That's right.
He's going to end up, I think, he sort of peaked with Oregon and then Philadelphia in the NFL, and now he's at UCLA, and he's really struggling, and he might end up sort of like, Lane Kiffin at Florida Atlantic or Florida International. I don't even know what school he coaches at, but down in those ranks is how I see it. But anyway, we'll see what happens. He introduced that whole speed offense that you see with a lot of teams now. Chip Kelly gets credit for that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's true. Now, Chuck, it wasn't clear. Was the game a hit or a miss?
Well, John, it's always a hit for someone and a miss for someone else. In fact, I heard you say that to Ed. You said it was a hit, and you said, no, it's a miss, or the other way around. I can't remember last week. But it's a hit for Washington State, but, a hit for UCLA and Chip Kelly to to get the win because they haven't won a game and they're losing to awful teams.
Oh, yeah,
Washington State's a good team.
No, I know.
Washington State's got Mike Leach, from Old Texas Tech. They have and they have Gardner Minshew of Jacksonville in the NFL, and Mike Leach gets credit for that too. For Gardner Minshew being a product of his system.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's hear number 2.
Well, my number 2 is if you went with all the new quarterbacks in the NFL this week.
Yep.
You would have. There was 4 of them. First starts, and all 4 of them covered the spread.
Is that right?
Mason Rudolph didn't win with Pittsburgh, but they covered the spread.
That's right.
Against San Francisco.
That's right.
And, the other 3, Teddy Bridgewater and Kyle Allen, of course, of your Carolina
Panthers, that's right.
Panthers, and Daniel Jones of the New York Giants.
That's right. Very good.
They all won outright, and they were all brand new. So that's a hit for new quarterbacks. But, it says something about if you're struggling, Eli Manning, certainly Cam Newton in Charlotte, they haven't won a game in 6. Cam Newton hadn't won a game since November of 2018.
Yeah, I know. This
didn't win.
Chuck,
what's his face? Kyle Allen was the quarterback. It was a meaningless game against New Orleans at the end of the season last year, but it wasn't even Cam Newton. It was Kyle Allen.
That's right.
Was the quarterback who got the win. So I'm just saying I hope they stick with Kyle Allen.
I do too, Chuck, but you know the gig, right? When you make that much money, there's pressure on the head coach. Even though the general manager, the owner, would never put pressure on him, they're like, we're not going to pay this guy $20 million plus a year to sit on the bench. And ultimately, the signal that they give, mental telepathy or directly, is we're going to win or lose with that guy. And that's kind of the shame of it, right? The whole thing is to win the game. But in professional sport, there is that element, and folks have to realize that. And I think actually they do in this area. But I know it's just, Arizona. Arizona had the first pick for a reason. In other words, just wasn't a quarterback problem in picking Kyler Murray. But this is a team that has a lot of issues, and it didn't surprise me that not only did Carolina beat them, but they beat them running away. But Kyle Allen, there's something there, and you got to put the guy in there, maybe even for the long term. But I don't think that's going to happen. And my guess is you would agree with me on that. That as soon as Cam Newton's ready, he's going to come back.
Well, I suspect maybe he's not even unready. I suspect they put him down. that team is death when he's in there. I'm telling you, it had to be a life for those guys on that team, like McCaffrey and the middle linebacker, Kuechly, Kuechly, whatever. But I think when the owner puts pressure, if it's through mental telepathy, John, it's okay. But when it's overt, then it's dangerous.
No,
Chuck, I think it's interesting, Kyle Murray, that you mentioned. I'm very surprised that Arizona is doing as well as they're doing. And Cliff Kingsbury was fired at Texas Tech, and then Arizona hired him. It's amazing, but they're certainly doing way better than I think a lot of people expect.
Hey, this is a side note, Chuck, and this just ultimately shows the speed in the NFL. He was sacked 8 times yesterday, and the game a couple weeks ago Kyler Murray was.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh
my gosh!
Did you watch the Lions Cardinals game? The first week of the season. And,
yeah.
Oh, the defensive lineman one time, Kyler Murray had literally 3 or 4 steps on him, and he started to jet from him. He couldn't get away from him, and that is the difference of college versus the NFL. I've talked to people that have played in the NFL, and they'll say they're just as big, they're just as strong. The difference between college and pros is the guys in the pros are faster. They're just faster. And there were so many times yesterday he just couldn't get away from those guys. Where in months past, right, when his time at A&M and eventually at Oklahoma, he got away from those guys virtually every time, and he can't do that every time now. It's amazing.
And what that means for the player, the speed, because people are faster, right, just like you say.
Yep.
But so you adjust for your speed in decision making, because Kyler Murray is pretty fast. But let's say there's quarterbacks that are not so fast, so they just have to know that guy's faster, and they have to decide, that much quicker whether to just go down or to throw or to protect the ball or whatever decision they have to make. It has to be way quicker because of what you said, the speed of the player.
It's amazing. All right, so we'll shift to my hit or miss. Mine was a hit, and it has to do with, of course, Chuck, your first guess, Claire's softball game, 8 and under from this past weekend. So So, they are undefeated. The other team's undefeated. And in particular, like the story behind this, it has something to do with it. The pitcher for Claire's team was the pitcher on her team also last year. They have a draft, so it's somewhat coincidental that they're on the same team. But this pitcher comes from a softball family. She's one of 5 girls. All her older sisters have played softball. They've excelled in softball. And this literally, it's like her 6th season, her mom told me, right? And she's 8 years old, right? So yeah. So she's in this, she's in this environment all the time. And she's their pitcher. She's their best fielder. She's their best hitter. She's just their best player. She's a really terrific kid, too. But the other day, I was standing right next to the end of the dugout, and her mom is directly to my right, and I'm talking with her and some of the other parents just periodically. In the first inning, in the first half of the inning, Claire's team scores 2 runs. Now remember, this is 2 undefeated teams against one another, and they're kind of parents are like too many people probably know that stat, right? That both teams are like 4 or 5-0, whatever the case was. And Claire's team scores 2 runs. So the other half of the inning, Claire's team is in the field, and the other team scores 4 runs. Now in this environment, in this 8 and under, you can only score 4 runs until the final inning, and then you can score as many runs as you need to if you have to win the game. Right?
Gotcha.
So once you score 4 runs, no matter what the situation is, how many outs, how many people on base, inning over. The girl lets up 4 runs, right? And of course, the team lets up 4 runs, but this particular gal is the pitcher, and she comes to the bench and she is in tears. And I said to her, Mom, I kind of just nodded, and she walks over there and she's having this conversation with her. And next thing I know, the mother's saying, honey, it's 4 runs. Remember, this is a team effort. And what she said to her was just so good and so professional and so adult. I was moved by it. And she just said, remember, honey, you just keep giving your best. You keep giving an effort. You do not quit as a result of this. You go back out there and you put that glove on, you take that ball and you try to mow these guys down. But that's not what this is about. Right? You're going to get runs scored on you. This happens. This is a part of sport. And actually, I'm trying to articulate what she said, but it wasn't near as beautiful as actually it came out. It was wonderful. And I said this to my wife after the game because she was at my son's soccer game, which was at the same time. And I mentioned it to her. And the first thing Alicia said was, oh, no, that mom, she's a counselor. She's a school counselor. And I said,
really?
Yeah, boy, did she sound like one. But Chuck, it wasn't even so much counseling. It was just good parenting, right? And I do wish I could have quoted her specifically because it was such a wonderful moment. And she just put it in perspective. And, she didn't, she acknowledged her tears. She acknowledged that she was frustrated, whatever. But she just goes, right? Like, let's move on, right? We move on from this. Runs are scored. And when you're the pitcher, runs are scored. And I know you're good and you probably think you're really good and all that, but let's move on from this. And I thought it was a really neat moment. And did her daughter stop crying? Not immediately. But of course it helped that, within the next inning or 2, they took the lead. So I don't really know how she would have reacted overall if they would have lost the game. But all I know is
no, but she went back out there and she pitched.
Oh yeah, and I think
there you go. You have to say that, yeah.
Yeah, and she went back out there, and I just love what her mom did and how she said it, and I thought that was fantastic. And like I said, I was truly moved by it, and I was like, I just gave her a thumbs up when she walked back, but the look she gave me was like, yeah, like this is what we deal with, and she's used to it. She's this little gal's one of 5 gals, and there's a softball family and so forth. So my guess is she's said that before. You know what I mean?
Well, what it reminds me of, it comes from a movie, John. If you can ever work a quote from a movie into a conversation, you get points. And
True.
I just happen to see, I've seen this movie many times, and I love it. It's called The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh, yeah, with Matt Damon.
And Will,
yeah.
Right, Matt Damon, and Will Smith is his caddy, and he's kind of an angel of some kind. And anyway, he says, golf is a game that cannot be won. It can only be played. And of course, he's talking about life, right?
That's right, of course.
And that's what the hit that you're talking about, the experience that you're sharing, reminds me of, right?
Oh yeah,
it's a game that can only be played. You're not supposed to win all the time. You're just supposed to play it.
That's right.
So anyway, okay.
Well, Chuck, hey, listen, before you go, we have Coach Joe Reich, somebody you met recently, and I know that you got to like in our conversation a couple weeks ago when you're on campus with me. So he's coming on in a couple minutes. But before you go, Chuck, I have a couple, sports trivia questions for you. You ready to do it?
I'm ready to do it, and I know everything about Frank Reich. So if one of those things is in there, I'm going to get it.
I know.
Say hi to Joe for me for sure.
Absolutely.
And Frank Reich, I'm picking every week for the rest of the season against the spread.
I know that was
look how well they're doing without Andrew Luck.
I know. Okay. No, they're doing pretty well. There's no doubt about it. All right, Chuck. 4 questions.
Okay.
Number 1, where did former Detroit Pistons great Bob Lanier play college basketball?
Bob Lanier played at St. Bonaventure.
Oh, my gosh. You crushed it. Very good. In the movie Diner, how many times did Steve Guttenberg's fiancée appear in the film? And, of course, people that know this movie know that the whole backdrop was he wasn't going to marry her unless she passed this quiz about the Baltimore Colts. Right?
Of course, and being a Baltimore Colts fan, which you know, John, I knew the answers to all the questions. And I don't think she appeared in the movie because he was asking the questions from one side of a wall.
That's right.
And she was on the other side, and she was answering the questions. And one was about Alan Amici, I'm pretty sure, who scored a touchdown run on his first carry. And he said, "Who was that?" And she said, "Whatever, hold it." But she answered sort of the same time.
It's right.
He wasn't sure that he said, "You don't know it," or something like that, and he wasn't sure whether to give credit to it or not.
That's right. In fact, Chuck, you remember we heard her voice, but we never saw her face, which I thought was clever on the behalf of the director. Right? That was good.
Right.
Chuck, in the mid 1980s, who replaced on the Baltimore Orioles Joe Altobelli as manager?
Oh, I don't know, but I'm going to guess it was only for 6 games, and it was Cal Ripken Sr.
Chuck, you're 3 for 3. Now, this last one you can actually get wrong.
Because Cal is 0-6 or 0-7. Cal Ripken Sr., Cal Ripken Jr.'s dad, he never won a game as the manager of the Baltimore Orioles, I think. I
know, because the next year they started like 0-31 and they got fired, right?
No, he got fired halfway through, and then Frank Robinson took over, and they went 0-21. And Frank had more losses than Cal Sr.
I know, it's amazing. Anyway. But you can only fire so many guys. There's only so many managers out there, right?
Right.
All right, Chuck, how many wins will my beloved University of Michigan have this year? Now, remember,
John,
before you answer,
not a trivia question.
Yeah, it is. Because I want you to truly predict this. No, Chuck, knowing that they have Iowa.
I'm saying it's not a trivia question; it's a prediction.
I know, of course.
John, you're asking me to be a prophet. A prophet only says what happens in the present, and interprets. He doesn't give the actual what's going to happen.
But Chuck, of these 4,
they're going to struggle. The pressure is on Jim Harbaugh, and when the pressure is on him, and he's feeling it, and he's more concerned about himself, let's say, than the team, than his players, then that's what happens. You lose. They fumbled going in. That's the end of the game.
It is.
It was the end of the game. It was going to be 7-7, and they fumbled, and it's the end, and everyone knows it's the end. Poor Jim was a great coach up until he lost to his brother in the Super Bowl.
And then he fell apart.
My own interpretation, because I was always picking him, and he always... To say that he didn't lose, someone said that he never won as an underdog, but he won as a 41-point underdog at Stanford against USC.
It was not
maybe at Michigan,
Chuck,
but at Stanford he always won as an underdog. At San Francisco he always won as an underdog.
Chuck,
but you're right. At Michigan, I don't think he does.
Well, Chuck, I think I have to correct that. I think it was 21 points. I don't think it was 41 points, but it was a big spread.
It was 41. John, it was bigger than Appalachian State was underdog to Michigan. It was the same year.
Chuck, that's fantastic. I'm going to talk about App State later.
I went 3 for 3 on the trivia. You can't doubt me on this.
Chuck, so knowing that they have Iowa coming up, Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Ohio State, they're 2 and I know, isn't that crazy? They're 2-1 right now. How many games are they going to win?
Yeah, they could win only 6, but they'll probably win 8. They'll win some of those games. Shea Patterson is good. Those guys are good. He's got to give confidence to Patterson. Don't play the other guy. Just play Patterson's a senior.
I agree.
Play him and give him confidence like he used to do with all those guys. Alex Smith would probably be nothing if it wasn't for Jim Harbaugh. I'm telling you right now, he boosted him as soon as he got to
San Francisco.
Anyway,
very good.
I hope to see him do well, but I think they're going to struggle.
I do too.
I don't think it'll be more than 8.
No, I agree with that, brother.
But John, I know you agree, because after last year when they lost to Notre Dame, you said, they're going to be terrible. And then they went and won the rest of their games, and you're like, they're going to crush Ohio State. And they did. So I'm sorry to expose John's fan vulnerability as a Michigan. John, your analysis with Michigan involved is 0. It's
I know,
nothing.
of course. But I take pride in that because I'm not real serious about it. I just want them to win, right? I don't know if they're going to win. I just want them to win.
The message I want to get to you today, John, is when we talk about Michigan, You have no insight.
Hey, listen, folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We're being joined by Charlie Wilkinson, seminarian. Listen, one of the reasons, folks, I brought Charlie Wilkinson back on the show is you can see him and I have a hoot when we chat about sports and anything else. But he's heading back to India in a couple weeks, and I want you to pray for him, pray for his formation, pray for those people forming him, and pray for his safety to restart all this back to India in a couple weeks. And Chuck, thank you for joining us for the show, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
John, thank you so much. I've got to go now because my 92-year-old mother is staring at me when we have to go on her walk.
I don't blame you. Go enjoy that, buddy, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.
Okay. That was Charlie Wilkinson. Great conversation as always. It ran a little bit over, but we're going to go to our next guest. First, we're going to do the weekend headlines, but we'll do that after Joe Reich comes on. Let's bring on the head football coach at Wingate University, of course, the same place in which I teach exercise science. Joe Reich, welcome to the show. Joe Reich, welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, I thought we had him. Seems like we're having a little technical difficulty with the phone lines right now.
Okay. Let's have him call back in, and then we'll come right back to him. You're listening to Faith in Sport, folks, here on Carolina Catholic Radio. If you just joined us, know that there's a couple ways to listen in on the show. In fact, there's 3 ways in particular. You're probably, or you may be listening on AM 1270. Thank you for doing that. But also, some of you folks have downloaded the app. It's Carolina Catholic Radio Network, and just hit Listen Live, or you can hit Listen Live on carolinacatholicradio.org. Just go to our website. You can listen via that way as well. And I know probably our listeners maybe... Well, I'd love to hear from us. In fact, I'd love to do a demographic study, see how exactly people are listening to the show. Do we have Joe Reich back on the phone? All right, folks. I already mentioned he's the head football coach at Wingate University, the same place in which I teach exercise science. Joe Reich, welcome. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Dr. Acquaviva. How you doing?
Good. Hey, listen, we were talking off air this morning, and I had a list of things I wanted to talk to you about, and then it just hit me as we were talking. Now, everybody knows that virtually every college football game, minus the Thursday, Friday, the bowl games and stuff can be played on non-Saturdays, but virtually every college game, including Division II, which Wingate is, right. They're played on Saturday. And the question I asked you earlier was, I go, Joe, this just came to me, but are you distracted by all the things that had happened on Saturday and just being in a coach's mind and being a coach and so forth? You think about football a lot, and you think about how we could have done better and so forth. And I asked you, is the game, going through the film in your head, is it a distraction for you when you're at Sunday Mass? And what did you tell me, buddy?
Yeah. It actually, Mass for me is a nice. Mass for me just kind of centers me, So it's actually it's probably the one place I can put football away and just focus on something else. I know that sounds funny, but it's like I really, to me, I have to start my Sunday that way. So for example, this last weekend, I got home, it was a late game, got home late at night, get up, and the first thing I do in the morning, go to Mass.
Yep.
And it just kind of centers me for the rest of the day. It's going to be a busy day. After Mass, I go right into work, and I'm in at work till late Sunday night, and we come in at 6:30 a.m. on Monday and 6:30 a.m. Tuesday, and we go till late night. So it's just those first few days of the week are so busy. To me, Mass is the one thing that kind of centers me, keeps me focused, and really, if for some reason if I miss, I feel off really for the rest of the week. I know that sounds kind of funny, but that's just the way. And I actually don't have problems. It's the one place I can kind of put it behind me.
If just the football coaches off the top of my head that I know that are Catholic, Nick Saban, Mark D'Antonio, Jim Harbaugh, and so forth, I bet if I asked them that same question, they would look at me and go, "Are you kidding me? I think about football half of the Mass." I hope that's not the case, and I appreciate that. And I know you to be a straight shooter, and so I appreciate that response.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's switch gears to something. You've been a coach at Wingate University for 19 years, for over 30 total, correct? And you did the math today when we were on the phone earlier, and
32 years.
There you go. So in your 19 years, primarily as a head coach at Wingate University, you've probably changed some things about how you coach and how you recruit and so forth. But what do you look for now in student athletes that you probably missed or just simply didn't have the experience to gain from? Maybe that you could have done in your first years of coaching?
Yeah, no doubt. I think early on in my career, when you become a head coach, you think, okay, we just got to get players. You think talent, which obviously you got to get talented players. But you come up originally and say, you know what, we're going to have to push the boundaries a little bit on getting some low-grade guys in or low test score guys, but let's just push. And the reality is, after doing that for a few years, they're like, yeah, that doesn't work for us. We need to get good students. We need to get, at this university, those guys weren't making it. If they were below a 2.8, ironically enough, who now President Dr. Rep Brown, when he was in charge of more the admissions end of it, he and I would talk, and it was like, anybody below a 2.8 is going to struggle here. So we really got to that point where, all right, let's not take anybody below that mark. So we started upping the academic mark on it, and because we found those guys were just more reliable, they were going to be here, and that's just the way it was. Now, do we dip down below that every now and then? Yes, we do. But it was like we said to the staff, okay, well, if we're going to take a guy that's below that mark, then we need to know why. We need to know why we're taking him and how that guy is going to make it here.
Yeah,
that would be number one. Then number two is, we're looking for good football character guys. And I know that sounds funny, but there's character guys and there's football character guys. Not everybody's going to be a choir boy.
Right.
So they're not all going to be the perfect human beings. And that's okay, but they have to have there has to be a certain grit about them. There has to be a certain integrity about them. There has to be a certain character about them that says, okay, this guy's going to do what I ask him to do. And because we're going to push them, and to be pushed to your limits, it takes a certain grit.
Yeah.
And we need that kind of guy. We need that guy that's he's not going to quit. He's not going to turn tail and run the other way when we really try to push him to the next level, kind of thing. So those are probably the two biggest areas to me: the academic piece of it, and then just that football character, that grit that comes with the guys. We didn't call it that back in the day, not till Angela Duckworth wrote a book on grit. But that's that mental toughness aspect to it.
We're talking to Joe Reich, folks. You're listening to Faith in Sport. Joe is the head football coach at Wingate University, of course, the same university in which I'm an exercise science professor. Joe, give an idea, because I think a lot of our listeners aren't necessarily big sports fans. They're tuned into Catholic radio. My show's on. They're like, I'll just leave it on here. I think other people are sports and sports fans, and they follow sports to a certain extent. But just give, just in a minute or less, or actually just a couple minutes, what is it like to be a student athlete in football at Wingate University? Like, for instance, just talk about what their average day is like during the football season.
Sure, absolutely. It's we can only spend 20 hours with them during a week, and no more than 4 a day.
That's an NCAA rule, correct?
That's an NCAA rule, and it can be a grind for these guys. When you think about just the emotional, it's not even so much the time, but some of it is just the emotional and physical energy that they spend.
Yep.
For example, we give them Sunday off. That's their NCAA required day off. Then they get up Monday, and the travel squad guys lift by appointment throughout the day on Monday, and then we meet in the afternoon on Monday, and then we practice at night. We get off the field between 8:30 and 9 o'clock on Monday night.
Jeez.
Then Tuesday, we meet in the afternoon. We practice in the afternoon. We're off the field at 7 o'clock. Wednesday, the travel squad guys lift again, and then we meet in the afternoon. We practice in the afternoon. We're typically off a little bit earlier. They're like 6:15, 6:30. Thursday, the non-travel squad guys are lifting, and then we're in a lot of meetings. And then we actually have a walkthrough on Thursday, just physiological. You and I have talked about this before. Physiologically, we try to give them a break after Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practice. Thursday, we just do a walkthrough. We call it No Sweat Thursday, just trying to give them a break from the previous days. And then Friday is more meetings. Fast Friday, quick practice, about an hour, a little over an hour practice on Friday, just in helmets. Then the travel squad meets Friday night. Then Saturday morning we actually get up and do a special teams meeting and a walkthrough, and then we have the game on Saturday night. So it can be a grind for these guys. There's no doubt about it. And we try to respect their time in terms of, like, for example, tonight we're trying to get them out. We actually typically we get off the field at 9, but we talked as a staff and we need to get our guys off the field earlier. So we moved the whole schedule up to try to get them off by 8:30 tonight, just to respect their own time and get them out so they can do their schoolwork and things like that. So it's trying to find that fine line between the two of them.
Now, Joe, go back just a minute ago. You said that NCAA limits the time that you have them to 20 hours a week, correct?
Yes, correct.
And my guess is that your wife, Dee, would love that the NCAA limited your time, too. Is that possible?
Right.
Especially,
Yeah, I'm sure that would go over, particularly when my kids are in the house. There's no doubt about that. And that's always, people ask me, why do you still coach Division II and not Division I? And one of the things I've always said is, because we can have a life here. We can. When you're the head coach, you can make your own schedule, and that's been the big thing. And I can try to help out our assistant coaches here by trying to give them a little more time off and to see the family. But it's college football; it's going to be a grind. I mean, that's you don't go into when you get into it, this is the way it is.
Hey, well, you just mentioned Division I, so let's go down that path a little bit.
Sure.
Is it safe to say that you're coaching at Division II rather than Division I because you like it, you appreciate the lower emphasis on winning? Or is the pressure of winning at all levels for every sport virtually the same?
Well, I'm going to say this. I think the pressure is it's the same across the board, but it's different in that Division I schools, having been at that level, it's all very public. It's all, hey, you're struggling, and everybody knows about it. And it's in the papers and it's on TV if you're struggling. At this level, there's no less pressure from the administration. There's no less pressure from yourself, more importantly, but it's just not as public. It's just not as out there in the papers and all that other stuff. But the pressure's still there, and even more than that, I think as a coach, you put pressure on yourself. I mean, it's really when I've had when any years that we've struggled, and you meet with your bosses just like everybody else does, and they say, hey, we need you to do better.
Yeah.
Like everybody goes through at different times. There's no more pressure that anyone can put on us than we don't put on ourselves. And I think that's true of college football coaches and really college coaches across the board, not just football coaches. So the pressure is the same from that standpoint, but like I said, it's different because it's not played out in the public eye as much. You're not, like Jim Harbaugh right now is getting, they're just crushing him in the media right now, and everybody around the Michigan program, and it gets a life unto itself. Whereas at our level, you don't really get that public swell of either one way or the other, So it makes it just different that way.
And you mentioned that it's public, and you mentioned the Jim Harbaugh thing, and of course any coach that loses, especially if you just go 0-1, my goodness, for the top 25 teams, a lot of them that have winning programs from year to year, decade to decade, and so forth. But the social media aspect has to multiply that by a number that we can't even fathom, right? Like,
there's no doubt. There's no doubt, because it becomes that groundswell, somebody puts it on there, and it becomes the drama of, hey, this is pretty cool, let's do this. And I don't think people realize, how much that affects families. You know what I mean? I think they both say, well, Jim Harbaugh, he's getting paid a lot of money, and he's a college coach, and he knows to expect that. No, you don't really. I mean, you obviously, when you get into coaching, you understand that's part of the game. And
sure.
Like I said, I've been on staffs that have gotten fired before too. So it is part of the game, but it's that social media aspect to it has definitely become a little bit of a downside to a certain extent. I mean, you can build a lot of great things on social media too, though, as well. So that's kind of the give and take of the social media thing. I learned a long time ago from my brother when my brother was a player, back before I got in coaching, actually a long time ago. I would joke around with him, and he's a few years in the NFL at that point, and he couldn't tell you what was going on in the world. Nothing. Had zero, because he just didn't read the papers.
Yeah.
He didn't watch the news. He didn't do anything because he didn't want to hear about anything. And when I became a coach, you kind of do the same thing. You don't go on social media other than do some recruiting.
Yep.
You just kind of stay away from it, and just it is what it is. You have to kind of insulate yourself from all that.
You referred to your brother Frank. He's the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and is it possible now that the reason he doesn't get on there is just simply because he's so busy? Right? Yeah,
he's totally. I'll just say this. I don't think people realize what the NFL, college coaching is a grind to begin with, but NFL coaching, I'll give you an example. I spoke with somebody on his staff, a former member of his staff, and who had gone back to college after being there. Like, well, what's the difference? And he's like, we're sleeping in the office 2 or 3 nights out of the week, as a stat, that kind of thing. Like, just the difference in the NFL level is, we can't be with our guys. We can only be with our guys 20 hours a week, and they're in classes most of the day. So in the pros, they're not in classes. So in the middle of the day, those guys are in there. So the only time that the coaches can do a lot of their work is at off hour, like early in the morning or late at night. So what happens is they meet with their guys, they walk through in the morning, they practice in early afternoon, and then they've got to get back to game plan. And so it's really kind of a grind there in terms of all that. And again, I've never coached in the NFL, so I don't know all the specifics of it, but just kind of watching my brother go through it.
Yeah.
But he loves it. He's you know what? He's totally bought in. He is a grinder extraordinaire. I mean, the guy he grinds it more than anybody else I've ever met.
Interesting.
Just the way he works, and it's kind of neat to kind of watch from this standpoint and watch him and his staff. And I've had a chance to go up there a couple times, and they really very professional, great staff. And they just grind the heck out of it.
Your brother may have the bigger name, Joe, but who has a lot more wins between the two of you?
I've said it to him a couple times after he won his first one. I'm like, okay, you only got, I don't remember what I had at the time. Maybe you only got 110 more to go, or whatever it was, something like that.
I was going to ask you, do you have any idea how many games you have won as a head coach in your 19 years?
Not really. I know it's over 100 somewhere, but, like I said, at some point, it just, I don't even want to know. Like, I don't want to know either way. It's just, it's you got to, and it gets just a mentality. You got to, what's in front of you? What's right now?
Yeah, exactly.
In the day-to-day, we tell the players that all the time, so it would be hypocritical of me to think any other way. It doesn't matter what happened before. Let's focus on this Monday and this Monday practice today, and let's do the best job we can today. It's kind of like going back to the question you asked me first. When I'm in Mass, and we have a term, dominate the moment.
Yeah.
So I think about that when I'm going to Mass, like, okay, I'm going to dominate this moment because I'm in Mass right now. I'm not in meetings.
That's right.
I'm trying to stay focused on this right now. So I know that may sound a little hokey, but that's just the way we are.
Oh no, you come off as legitimate, and that sounds as sincere as you can say it. Well, listen, let's end with this. You guys are 3-0. Congratulations on the good start. And for anybody out there who wants to or does follow Wingate University football, who do you guys have coming up this weekend?
We play Catawba this weekend up at Catawba. Catawba's, we have a nice history with Catawba. They're obviously another South Atlantic Conference member, and they're a really good football team. Curtis Walker, their head football coach, does a phenomenal job up there, and they'll be a tough opponent for us. So we're looking forward to it, and looking forward to today, and getting 1% better every day.
Very good, Joe Reich. Thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on the good start, and good luck the rest of the year. And I hope you and I talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Take care, Joe. Well, there you go. Joe Reich, the head coach of Wingate University's football team. He's been there for 19 years. I consider Joe a friend. And the interesting thing is his wife works fairly close to proximity to where I work, and she works in a similar field. She works in the campus recreation side, and I've gotten to know her well. She's like double thumbs up, just a high-quality gal. And I've gotten to know Joe as well. We used to go to the same church together. Now we go to different parishes, but just the real deal, man. He's a straight shooter, and I just see him as a solid guy. He's a solid Catholic, and I always just hope the best for him. He's just, I think he does a great job on and off the field. And just to be clear, and just to mention that again, just to put things in perspective, his brother not only is the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, but he played for, I think, 14 years in the NFL, including for the Carolina Panthers. He was the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, and he was known. If anybody follows college and or pro football, maybe knows these two aspects of trivia about Frank Reich, Joe's brother, Joe being our guest today, or one of the guests today, and that is he held, I know at one point, 2 records, both for comebacks. The largest comeback in college football history, they were down 31-3 when he was at Maryland, and the University of Miami was 31-3 up, and they ended up winning the game. And then the other one, you may know this, Chris, is it was in the playoffs. Jim Kelly was the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. He got hurt. Joe Reich was the quarterback, or Frank Reich was the quarterback, and they were down, I'm pretty sure it was 35. It was 35-3, I think, at one point. Either way, the final score was 38-35. He brought them back. Yep, and then led them to the AFC Championship game, and they ended up going to the Super Bowl. And the irony was he led them all through the playoffs. And then for the Super Bowl, Jim Kelly came back and actually lost. They didn't win the game. But neat stuff about Joe Reich and Frank Reich. Certainly a football family. And I just think a great deal of Joe Reich, and I thank him for being on the show. And it always adds something to the show to have him on. All right, folks, let's do this. Let's shift gears. Just so you're clear, if you're just joining us, this is Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. In studio is producer Chris Pressler. This is Carolina Catholic Radio. If you have anything to ask me, or in particular, I'm looking for people that go, hey, you should have such and such coach on, or this athlete on, or this administrator of sport on your show, especially if they exude their Christian faith and they kind of wear it on their sleeve, so to speak. We would love to have those folks on the show. And you can tweet me this information at j.aquaviva1, or you can email me at faithandsport@wingate.edu. And then the and in there is A-N-D, so it's faithandsport@wingate.edu. Remember, if you're listening on AM 1270, be sure to download the app, Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, or just go to carolinacatholicradio.org. In both cases, just hit the tab that says Listen Live, and you can check us out 3 different ways, and those are the 3 ways. All right, coming up in the second half of this program, we're going to do the weekend headlines here in a minute. We have quick Q&A with Dr. A, and then we're going to end it all with our Cathlete of the Week. So let's talk about what's going on in the world of sport this week. No particular order. Major League Baseball, we're in the final week of the regular season, months after it began. In fact, gosh, pitchers and catchers report sometime in February, so that's amazing. There was snow on the ground in most places, not here, if I remember correctly. In fact, the playoffs begin a week from tomorrow. The Astros clinched just a couple days ago. Boy, they look especially strong with pitchers Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, Zach Greinke, and some of the really most good, powerful hitters in the game. So I'm picking the Astros and the Dodgers to go to the World Series, and I'll make my pick if between those 2 teams when the time comes. College football, Week 4 just completed. A few of the top teams tumbled. The aforementioned University of Michigan was one. They got crushed by Wisconsin. UCF lost to Pittsburgh, and then Texas A&M lost to Auburn, in fact. But the big local story is App State beating UNC. And this is their first Power 5 win since they beat University of Michigan in 2007. And you know the irony is, Chris? The final score of the game against the University of Michigan, which Michigan at the time, by the way, was number 5 in the country. It's considered the biggest upset in the history of college football. The final score was 34-31, right? They just beat UNC. It's their first victory since 2007 on one of the Power 5 conferences. Right? There's the ACC, there's the Big Ten, and so forth. They beat UNC on Saturday. The final score was 34-32. It was just 1 point different. I thought that was interesting. Everybody should write that down. 1 point difference. In the NFL, we just completed Week 3. The Patriots, the Cowboys, the Packers continue to look good. They're all 3-0. The Steelers are 0-3. Your Redskins are 1-1, I want to say, and they're playing tonight, so they have a chance to go 2-1. And Chris, who are they playing?
They're playing the Chicago Bears tonight.
Oh, they don't have a chance, brother. They're going to be 1-2, no doubt. No, I don't know. That should be a good game. I hope it is. And as we talked about with Charlie Wilkinson, our first guest, the Panthers get their first win with backup Kyle Allen, and I think that's going to cause a great deal of conversation and maybe even some controversy. But Chuck said, he said, I don't think this is true, but Chuck goes, it's possible that he's not even hurt. They just needed a reason to put Kyle Allen in. But I think Cam Newton can lead this team to victory, but he needs healthy legs and healthy feet. And if he doesn't have that, even slightly hurt, it's not like most drop-back quarterbacks. He can't run. He's not going to be effective. Kyle Allen is going to be better. Don't put Cam Newton in there until Cam Newton is completely healed. The NHL, they're in the preseason. Their first regular season game is just 2 weeks away. So all your hockey fans, that's coming up just in the next few weeks. So let's move on and switch gears here. Chris, you ready to shoot some questions at me? This is the quick Q&A with Dr. A. You're listening to Faith in Sport. Folks, thank you for joining us on the show today. Chris, what's the first question?
Well, first up, should FBS teams sidestep FCS teams to pad their records?
Very good. Okay, so there's a couple acronyms in there. A lot of people don't know what this stands for. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I heard a couple talking heads on radio and TV mention this. First of all, let me give you some background. FBS teams, this is talking about college football. FBS teams are the football bowl subdivision, and that means the teams that used to be considered 1A. These are all the big schools. These are the Alabamas and the Clemson and the UNCs and the Michigans and the Michigan States and Ohio State and so forth. And then the FCS teams are the football championship subdivision. They used to be the former 1AA. They're Division I teams, but they don't quite have the enrollment. They have smaller athletic budgets and so forth. And teams that fit into this category used to be App State. App State has gone up to Division I, an FBS team. But there's a lot of teams that are like that. In fact, UNC Charlotte is an example of an FCS team. Anyway, a lot of people are saying the big guys don't play these small teams. Like just this past weekend, Clemson played against UNC Charlotte, right? And the reason they played, by the way, is that Dabo Swinney is friends with the head coach at UNC, and it's a favor as much as anything. But I'll say that it's good for college football for a few reasons. Primarily, it simply helps the other program, but it helps both programs. First of all, it gives the smaller programs exposure. Some of those guys struggle with people even knowing what state they're in by their name. People hear their name, they're like, I don't know where that is. Like Furman is a good example, right? It's in South Carolina. But people in the Midwest or down south or out west go, where's Furman, right? But if they play against Clemson, if they play against UNC, their name can be put on the map. People know where they are. And it provides a lot of money. Chris, I'm not sure you know this. Generally, when these teams play against these smaller teams, they pay them. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Listen to this. When Michigan played Army 2 weeks ago, Michigan paid out $1.5 million just for them to come travel to Ann Arbor to play the game.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is not uncommon. Penn State, who they play a couple weeks ago, I think it was Idaho, paid them $1.3 million. And the big story was Tennessee paid Georgia State about $1 million. And the irony was Georgia State beat them. In other words, most of the time, the reason you're going to be willing to pay them is that you get a victory. And by the way, this is a side note to this story. The reason that they schedule them, in part, is because you need 6 victories to go to a bowl game. And one of those victories can be against one of these lesser teams, one of these 1AA teams, or what's considered the FCS. So I think it's a good idea. I think that and one of the things about this money that's given to them, it allows them to pay for their athletics program. When you give Army $1.5 million, it supports their wrestling team and their volleyball team and their softball team and their baseball team and so forth. I just think it's ultimately good. And it just keeps the wheel spinning on college sports, because college sports isn't just basketball and football. It's all these other sports as well. Certainly don't get the notoriety, don't get the TV exposure, don't make the money and so forth. I ultimately think it's good. I want those folks saying to stop these games to be quiet. Chris, what's question number 2?
Well, question number 2 has to do with Major League Baseball.
Let's hear it.
And the question is, what's your take on the Astros' Justin Verlander?
Well, I think he's the best pitcher in the last 15 years of Major League Baseball. I think he's in his 16th year. This guy is great. He pitched his second no-hitter earlier this season, just a couple weeks ago. He just won his 20th game over the weekend. He's led his team to 3 World Series, 2 with the Detroit Tigers, 1 with the Houston Astros, in which they won last year. They're in the playoffs again this year. I'll be really surprised if they don't go to the World Series. In fact, I'll be kind of surprised if they don't win the World Series. I just think this guy he's a great competitor. I think he keeps his body in great shape. He's 37 years old, but he's pitching like he's 27. And I created this question just because I like to talk about that guy. I think he's the best pitcher this game has seen in the last 15 years. I think Clayton Kershaw's good. I think Max Scherzer's good. I think there's a whole list of guys, but at the top of that list, I think it's Justin Verlander. And for whatever reason, I think he doesn't get enough exposure. And I think one of the reasons is because how pretty his girlfriend is. His girlfriend is that supermodel. Oh, I'll think of it. Anyway, pretty blonde. And, of course, I had to say pretty in there, right? All supermodels are pretty. But anyway, I think he gets as much exposure, and that kind of diverts people from how good a pitcher he is as much as anything. But Justin Verlander's the man. How about question number 3, Chris?
Well, question number 3 is going back to college football, and the question is, what's with Alabama tracking students who leave the game early?
Oh, yeah. Chris, have you heard this?
No, I haven't heard about this.
Okay. So let me be clear on what this is the University of Alabama has done something that I think other schools are doing. All right, so they download an app. This is the students, right, that go to the games. They download an app, and they receive 100 Tide, referring to the Crimson Tide, loyalty points for attending a home football game, and they get 250 points per game for staying all 4 quarters. And they can use these points toward priority access to student football tickets. So I'm not quite sure I understand what that means, but they get some access to some privilege that they wouldn't normally have, or they puts them up further in the line, and they track them basically by GPS. So in other words, if they leave that stadium before the game is done, they don't get these additional 250 points. And you know what it looks like? It looks like Coach Nick Saban is the one who basically wanted this to happen. He got frustrated, but part of it is, Chris, so many of their games they win 59-10. And they're playing against, say, Arkansas or Vanderbilt or something. They're just playing these bad teams. And Alabama is so far ahead, even at halftime, people are like bored of the situation. Now, should they be leaving the game? Is this a morality thing? Obviously not. They can leave the game whenever they want. Mm-hmm. But I found it interesting that they're taking these points away. Of course, they're not taking any points away from them. They're just not giving them the points if they don't stay to the end of the game. But here's one of the reasons I find it interesting, and I think every Catholic out there is going to know this. Like at one of the churches I was at recently for Mass, it said, out of respect for your fellow parishioner and out of respect for the service, something like that, it said, we expect everybody to stay until the final hymn is sung. In other words, sometimes at any denomination, right, people just leave early, right? They want to get in the parking lot. They want to get home early, whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. And I thought of this, and I'm thinking, Chris, maybe we should put this app on people for church and not, and not give them some type of loyalty points or something. Maybe it has to do with, I don't know, what can we connect it to? I don't know. We can't say that it's going to directly be related to their salvation, but that'd be one way to get their attention, wouldn't it?
Right.
So anyway, I thought that was really interesting regarding what Alabama does. And a buddy of mine, I mentioned this to him off air a couple weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, are you familiar with this? And he said, I think University of Maryland is doing this as well, and they're just trying to encourage people to stay to the end of the game. I thought, wow, that's really interesting that folks are doing that. Hey, folks, before we start to head toward the end of the show, I want to encourage you guys to support this Catholic radio station. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. It took so much manpower to get this started back in March, Carolina Catholic Radio. And it's going to take a lot of money and effort to keep this train rolling. A lot of people have stepped up to assist our chairman, David Papandrea. And I want to thank David. I want to thank all those folks that have stepped up to help David and create this this big organization that people don't even see, right? There's only a couple people that they hear on the air, and there's so many people that are behind the scenes of Carolina Catholic Radio that deserve thanks, that deserve appreciation, so forth. But it's just like any other public radio station or any other station you hear of. Bills have to be paid. It's just a reality of the situation. Chris, how long have you been involved in radio?
Let's see. In total, I've been involved in radio for about 20 years, probably. Have you ever gone more than a few minutes working for a radio station where the word money wasn't brought up, right? No, most of the time, the stations I worked at, you have to pay the bills to stay on the air. It's very much a reality. It really is. It's just something that is, I don't know, there's no better way to put it. It's just the reality of being on the air. And this studio costs money to lease. These folks, you have to see all the equipment. Chris sitting here across from me in this glass is he's paid by the Carolina Catholic Radio, and there's so many things that happen that we don't even necessarily think of. It's just easy to turn on the dial, turn on your app, and go to the website, and there's nothing to do that. It just says listen for free, listen live, and so forth, and you don't even really think about it. But I just want the listeners out there that we have to consider putting some funds forward
to Carolina Catholic Radio to help this radio station just continue on, especially if you like this and other programs that we offer you on a weekly basis. All right, just a couple minutes left. Let's do our Cathlete of the Week. It's brought to us by Brand RPM. Get your brand and gear. We have access to over 1 million products, most of them relating directly to sportswear and apparel. And you can contact them and see what they have for you at brandrpm.com. Our Cathlete of the Week is Mike Sweeney. He played Major League Baseball for 16 years, primarily with the Kansas City Royals. And since his retirement from Major League Baseball in 2010, it seems like his primary mission is service to promote the Catholic faith. He's written the foreword to many Catholic books about sports. He's been the commencement speaker at Catholic universities, and he's said yes to countless Catholic initiatives. Here's a quote from him. Again, Mike Sweeney, our Cathlete of the Week. I'm all about our faith. I'm all about our church, and I'm all about the magisterium of the church, the teaching aspect of it. The beauty of being Catholic Christian. I know the good Lord chose to give me the wonderful treasure to be called Catholic Christian, a son of God, and I want to use everything I can in my power to share that gift with others. And thank you, Mike Sweeney, for all that you've done for the faith. And listeners, let's pray for his service to the church to continue. Speaking of prayer, I want you folks to pray for everybody here at this radio station, and in particular, our two guests today, Charlie Wilkinson, seminarian, heading back to his seminary in India in the next couple weeks. All seminarians could use our prayers for that matter. And Joe Reich, he's been a great server of the faith and great servant to our Lord, the head football coach at Wingate University, and him and his family deserve our prayers as well. So let's conclude with this. In sport, as in life, competing for the result is important, but playing well and fairly is even more important. And that comes from Pope Francis. Before we go, a special thank you to the guests I just mentioned, Charlie Wilkinson, seminarian, and Coach Joe Reich at Wingate University, head football coach, for joining me on the show today. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Carolina Catholic Radio for Faith in Sport.
We want to thank you for tuning in for Faith in Sport this afternoon on Carolina Catholic Radio. And if you enjoyed the show and would like to hear an encore presentation of the show, or you missed the show, you can hear an encore presentation of Faith in Sport this Saturday afternoon from 4 to 3. Also, Sunday afternoon from 2 to 3 here on WCGC 1270 AM Carolina Catholic Radio. Also streaming online at carolinacatholicradio.org and the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We'll meet you back here next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for more Faith and Sport on Carolina Catholic Radio.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.